we work in 6 countries in East, West, and South Africa. What we do is we work with partners with innovative ideas that ensure that research and innovation systems in those countries are strengthened. And before we started this work, we did a needs assessment. And something that really came out strongly is that different stakeholders in the research and innovation systems in these countries were working in silos. And so we decided as part of our big strategy is to have these connections between, for example, people who produce ideas which develop into innovations, that is academia, and then the industry, then policymakers and all that working together to strengthen research and innovations. And we look at it from an innovation ecosystem level. We'll be hearing more about our work in the course of this panel. Thank you so much, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Dr. for that introduction of what you do. And we believe you're doing a great job even to help scale up the social innovations. Over to you, Dr. Steve. Tell us, introduce your organization and what you're doing in that space.
Thank you very much. My name is Steve Ouma Akoth. For the purpose of this session, if you call me Akoth, I'll be very happy. Now, unfortunately, I don't have an organization, but I work here at Tangaza University College at the Institute of Social Transformation. And I really like what my colleague, Dr. Joya, said, that I think the best way to look at it is to really look at it from this ecosystem thinking, because our university has 3 prime functions: the function of teaching and research, the function of community outreach. Okay, I've mixed the teaching and research together. So research differently, teaching and learning, and community outreach. Now, if you look at it in that, sort of 3-legged stool, then our role is an everyday quest for innovation. Every day, teaching is about innovation. And one of the biggest things we've done at the Institute of Social Transformation, and also you heard in the morning the director of CSP talked about the program called MECOD, where we also partner as the Institute with the CSP and the University of Padova and Kenyatta University, is we have emphasized a method of teaching, a philosophy of teaching that shifts away from the typical banking model. So every teaching encounter is an innovation encounter. Every teaching encounter poses a new question, seeks to understand new possibilities of seeing and way of reading and teaching. And so perpetually, therefore, that becomes our sort of blueprint. And finally, as a way of introduction, I think, again, going back to the ecosystem, we need to remember that the boundary that we now have between industry and universities is a fictitious boundary. In fact, it's as fictitious as it just emerged in the last 50 years when academic disciplines started reinforcing their boundaries. For many years, there are many innovations that started in the university and then went to industry. And there are also many innovations that started in industry and came to the university. And so one of the things perhaps we'll be picking up in the panel as we proceed is how do we erase that boundary and think more in an ecosystem model. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Steve. You have emphasized that we need to remove the boundaries between academia and the industry if we are to succeed in system change. So we will be hearing more of that. Next, our next panelist, Grace, karibu sana.
Thank you very much. Let me start off by thanking Ashoka and Tangaza also for this opportunity to speak more about our work. I'm Grace Maingi. I work at the Kenya Community Development Foundation, KCDF. Being a community foundation that has been working in Kenya over the last 26 years, we focus on helping communities to flourish and to be resilient. So many would ask, what is a community foundation? Simply put, through grant making, through capacity building, we work closely with communities. We've been privileged today to also have some of the communities that we support here with us. They're exhibiting some of the things that they've been able to produce. And through the grants that we are able to give, we're able to push agendas around social development, issues around sustainable development, and social justice. And that's, in summary, what KCDF does. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Social innovations occur in the communities and for the communities. So it is very important when we support these communities. Last but not least, we'll go to our panelist, who is a social innovator. I want to welcome Dr. Wamuyu to tell us what she's been doing. Karibu.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Wamuyu Mahinda. I run an organization called Collaborative Value Partners Africa as the managing partner. I'm also an Ashoka Fellow, and currently I'm the co-chair for Catalyst 2030. The reason I've given you all those hats is because that's what we are doing. We are bringing different people in an ecosystem together for systems change. And our organization has two models. I'll be sharing about one model, collaboration model, later in the closing panel. And we also have a model called collective enterprise model that brings the enterprises, government, private sector together for systems change. So I believe more of that will come out as we have this panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, our panelists. We have an idea of what the different stakeholders are doing, even to help enhance social innovations for systems change. So as we can look at the panelists, they are representing different stakeholders, each are doing a very important role. But we need to realize that for us to be able to succeed, we need some collaboration. We also need a synergy among the actors. So the linkages are between academia, innovators, public and private sector, and even the funders are critical for the development and scaling of transformative social innovations. So our distinguished panelists will help us explore their roles and how they are fostering these transformative innovations, even as they consider collaborations and ways of strengthening the partnerships to promote transformative social innovations. So to get into our discussion today, I want to ask our panelists, how can academia, innovators, government, the private sector, and funders work together to overcome challenges that arise when it comes to developing and scaling transformative social innovations? How can we work together? And even as you answer that question, please highlight some of the examples of successful collaborations that you have been engaged in, even to promote transformative social innovations. And we'll start with our panelists. Dr. Joy.
Thank you very much. How can academia, innovators, funders work together to promote transformative social change through innovations. You know, when I got into this space, by the way, I'm still a senior lecturer at the University of Nairobi. I'm only serving my sabbatical at RISA. And so when I was going to RISA, I thought it was going to be extremely straightforward because, you know, in the academia, we live in this ivory tower and you have this mentality that we know everything, we know a lot, and we can stand and teach like we teach every day. So we think that everybody is ready to listen to us. But then you go out there and you realize things are different, the ball game is different, and you actually start seeing, actually, we are the problem at academia. Because my work is about, remember I said that I work at an ecosystem level. I don't come to a particular research at the university saying that I have this groundbreaking idea, I'm going to come up with the next innovation that's going to change Kenya for good. We don't do that. What we do is we want to bring change. We want to get these connections that will affect the whole ecosystem. And so we start with academia, where the research is happening, where the ideas are there, and we find different kinds of people. There are professors who just want to do their research, do their PhD, and just document how you can come up with this cell, with this kind of machine, and just put that in the lab, or just do a prototype and leave it there, and publish, and they get there, and they get promoted, and good with us. And there are those other kind of professors who are saying, why don't we push these innovations to market? And those are the ones that we want to work with, even these ones who are doing the research, we want to work with them. And they come up with all sorts of concerns, which of them they are valid, and they're like, what about the intellectual property that needs to be looked at? What about funding? What about all that? And so we come together. What we've done at RISA is to develop a research to commercialization program that the first course, or the first module in that course, is about mindset change. Talking to the researchers that really you have to be comfortable and be okay, that it's okay to take your research to the next level and develop an idea and be able to have that idea solve a particular issue in the community. And so what we do after that is to take them through innovating for the market. You know, in the classroom, we are full of all these conceptual framework, theoretical frameworks, and we stop to wonder, how do they apply in the real world? And we tell them, open up your eyes and see, what does the market need? Where is the gap? Who needs to take money where? Who wants, clean water? What are the challenges? What can you make it easier for people? Because unless you innovate to solve a problem, your innovations will not serve anybody to lack demand. And so you come again now, innovating for the market, understanding the challenges and coming with solution. And we know that we cannot do this alone. We want to bring in government. And so we work closely with the Kenya National Innovation Agency. They're our government partner. And actually the whole curriculum is anchored there. And we also work with Victoria Ventures, which are they're in the private sector who deal with issues of innovations and funding. And so we bring all these people together. They learn about the technicalities of that. They are helped to protect the ideas, because at RISA we believe whatever has value, it can be stolen. And we believe in do no harm. We don't want to bring out all these ideas from the labs only to expose them prematurely and have them stolen, because then we are doing harm. So we bring all this kind of support, the IP issues, we connect them to funders, we help them do some extremely interesting pitch decks. It's amazing how you can pitch for a product and get everybody listening. We take them through that. And most importantly, we want to ensure that at the final end, all these innovations that we are supporting, they're able to go out there and help us realize our development objectives. Of course, we are working in Rwanda with Catapult. We are working in Ghana with the Heritage Lab and the Ministry of Education. We are working in South Africa. We are working in Ethiopia. And it's really exciting seeing all these innovators getting linked up and of course, most importantly, benefiting from their own innovations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For innovations to be transformative, then we need to collaborate. It's very interesting. She's talked about academia being the problem, doing research that is not focused. So when we collaborate, then we are able to come up with innovations that can change systems. Next is Dr. Steve. He'll tell us how these stakeholders can work together, even as he gives as a successful example.
Thank you very much, Chair. So first, there are two words which have been introduced in the new question. The word transformation, because we are saying collaboration for transformation. And I think it's important to appreciate that transformation is a bit different from social change, because transformation implies certain holistic progress that is in a direction that contributes to improvement of human life, and also improvement on how we relate to each other and with the things around us. Because we have to think again now, thinking about ecosystem from a fairly fauna and flora perspective. So it's about this, how do we improve our lives, the way we relate with each other and with things around us. And that's the idea of transformation, which means that transformation cannot be negative, it's always positive. It's always towards enhancement of human dignity, human freedoms, equality, and so on. Social change can be negative, and this distinction is important vis-a-vis the second question. Then in terms of practical as a university, what we do to enhance collaboration, the first thing is, as I said before, and I want to go back to it, is to help our students and our lecturers to move beyond the ivory tower problem by realizing that, think about two universities. One is a university as an institution, and the second one, the world as a university. So we want our students, and we encourage our lecturers as well, to think of university not as an ivory tower, but just as a microsome of a bigger learning environment, so that the model of learning encourages students to also see the outside the university as part of the university learning space. There's a lot of learning that goes out there that needs to be weaved in. Now, the third area that we pursue to enhance our collaboration is the method of teaching and testing. You know, the Vice Chancellor talked about the introduction of artificial intelligence, and that many students now can use artificial intelligence to do term papers. And I've heard in some quarters that lecturers are concerned that now, how are we going to set exams? If you can set an exam which students can answer using artificial intelligence, then you're setting the wrong exam. The exam should be such that the machines can't think. The people have to think. So you have to change the exam from being those that require a programmed mathematical model to an exam that requires people to expand their faculties. So the problem is not the students who use artificial intelligence. The problem is exam that expects students to parrot back what is mathematically formulated. So I don't think artificial intelligence is a problem at all, and I think it's a good thing. And then lastly, what have we done together as a university with the industry that gives an example of how this collaboration can take place? Unfortunately, we found out our collaboration in a difficult moment, the moment of COVID-19. Many universities for years were used to teaching in the classical physical encounter. But during COVID-19, we had to go e-learning, and there are many platforms that emerged, and we have had to have collaborations with many technical institutions, IT providers, and we realized that, online learning expands opportunity for more people to access education. There are problems of quality, which we need to respond to, but there's also the problem of physical distribution of digital services. For example, a student in Turkana, and I've had a student joining us from Lodwar, has a huge problem in joining classes because of digital scarcity and the network limitation. But that also has made us to put pressure on government to expand digital outreach so that then access to education is no longer just about physical access to the university as a physical space, but it's also about distribution of access in terms of ability to engage with internet and so on. And lastly, on this one is that the university also, and this is something that also was raised by the Vice Chancellor, is a place that must remain as a safeguard for values. Innovation without safeguards can be at some point to the detriment of human society. The problem of climate change, the problem of global warming, has largely, to some extent, been about industrialization that did not take into account values. So part of what we do to enhance this collaboration is to affirm the notion of precautionary principle. Precautionary principle, as you remember, some of you, is an old principle that emerged in the United Nations and the global policy environment to compel governments and compel innovators to ensure that any innovation does not harm human life, does not harm the ecosystem. Precocious principle allows us to make sure that even as we innovate with a human society, with the ecosystem in mind. And that's an important contribution that we give as universities so that collaboration is also about sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You'll agree with me that many things are happening and people and organizations are working together. Over to our next panelist, Grace.
Thank you so much. I think when it comes to how can we work together, really to overcome these challenges, an appreciation of the different roles that we're playing within the ecosystem is key. As has been said, there's the role for the academia, there's the role that funders play, there's the role that communities and community organizations play. How do we leverage on each other's strengths? And how do we be able to reach out and find opportunities and points of synergy, points where we can be able to take conversations forward? One of the things that we've been able to do at KCDF, key to our values, is working together. We've been able to bridge the gap between community-based organizations and private sector, being a channel for support, but also a channel for learning, a channel for understanding the context within communities work with. As Dr. Joy had said earlier, you can be in your ivory tower and imagine everything will work 1, 2, 3, 4. One of the things that we have done is to help private sector understand how communities work, but also for communities to appreciate the desires and what private sector wants to see in terms of impact of the work of the money that they've put in. So being able to play that role is one thing that we have done. Looking to see how we can get academia into the work that we're doing is something that actually we're currently working through. We're setting up an innovation community lab whereby we can be able to have academia where they can test some of the ideas that have been percolating in institutions of higher learning, giving them ground upon which and places where they can collaborate with communities and seeing how we can scale that up. And I believe conferences such as this are opportunities for us to know more about what's going on in different sectors and places for us to make these connections. So this is very, very important. I think one of the key things that we must really be comfortable with is being uncomfortable in some of these conversations, but also, as was said earlier in the recap, how do we unlearn some things, relearn things, and also around what Dr. raised, mindset change, that as academia are viewing private sector or private sector is viewing communities, we remove the issue of suspicion or lack of trust, but we focus on how do we collectively address these developmental challenges that we're faced with. I think if we have the common shared values, shared vision, we will be able to collaborate more effectively because this is not a new challenge. The challenges of collaboration are not new. How can we learn from what has been successful in other fields. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace. That is quite informative. And now we move on to our next panelist, Dr. Wamuyu. Welcome, thank you.
Thank you. I'll take over from where Grace left, because I agree that we must ensure that when we work together, we are collaborating effectively and transforming jointly. That's what took me back to school, actually, because I was working as a CEO in an organization that was working in the whole of the biggest challenge in getting to the next level in terms of scaling was getting other people to work with me. Everybody is working in a silo and holding their partners very close to their chest, especially when it comes to donor funding. So I tried very hard to even have meetings with other CEOs and it didn't work. So I said, I don't know this thing. I need to unlearn, yeah? And then learn again. So I went back to school. And very specifically, I went to study how teams work and how they and the effect of collaboration. And the best people to research were Ashoka Fellows. I'm an Ashoka Fellow. I understand how Ashoka Fellows work. They believe in teams of teams. They believe in everybody a change maker. For those who know about Ashoka, we want everybody to collaborate. So I wanted to find out what is it that Ashoka Fellows are doing that other people can learn from and become more effective in that process of collaboration. So as I was doing that, I founded my current organization. That is why it's called Collaborative Value Partners Africa, because it's an organization that is working on the learnings of the research that I did in Africa in 19 countries. Now, coming to academia specifically, what are we researching? That's just an example of my own experience. When we go out to research, are we trying to solve the problems that are there in the communities that we are at? I know so many of my colleagues, even as I was doing my studies, are quickly completing this thing so that they can be called a doctor and the story ends and they go on with their life. But that's not good enough. We need to ensure that we are thinking about transformation of our communities. And one of the things I learned as I was out there is that we have very many homegrown solutions. Ashoka Fellows are great people with fantastic ideas, but there are gaps. And those gaps are in how do we collaborate? We know we want to collaborate, it's not a new thing. We know we want transformation or change, it's not a new thing. How do we do it? And that is what we are striving to do at Collaborative Value Partners. We have two models, like I said. One is a collaborative model, and the other one is building and scaling the innovations that the social entrepreneurs have in place. So that's one side of my life. The other side is I am a member of the Doctoral Association of Eastern Africa. This is an organization full of doctors. I mean, all these doctors and others, in the sense, there's so much knowledge in that organization. What are we doing with that knowledge? Not much. We can do more. And what we are trying to do there, we have started something called Friends of Daea, which is asking those learned people with their knowledge to start interacting very intentionally with the private sector. And one of the things we are doing is deep dives, where we are solving problems of the private sector and government by taking these guys who are doctors in different things, nutrition, health, climate change, and so on, into those spaces so that they can take that knowledge there and begin to co-create with these other partners wherever they may be, because they are needed there. But there needs to be a structure of how that becomes transformative and end up in systems change. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We know that collaborations are happening, but as our last panelist has said, there are still gaps. We need to up our game. So I want to ask Grace, from where you sit, how do you think that these collaborations or partnerships can be strengthened to ensure that transformative social innovations are sustainable and also have a lasting impact in the community?
Thank you for that question. I hope by sitting, on a light note, I hope by sitting here with these doctors, I'll also become a doctor by the time I come to my regular seat. But in terms of how can these partnerships really be strengthened and more importantly be sustainable and for us to see that there's benefit to the communities, I think we need to be able to learn from what we have seen in the past that hasn't worked and also be open to trying things together and be comfortable with failure. Because it's only through failure do you then be able to succeed. It's only through testing, seeing what works, and then being able to then recorrect and readjust. But let us not make mistakes that others have learned from. Hence my emphasis on, can we learn from what hasn't worked? It's very important for us also, as we get into these partnerships, as was said earlier, ensuring that those partnerships are not extractive in nature. To what extent are our partnerships mutually beneficial? To what extent are we honest in our partnerships in terms of everyone has a desired outcome, everyone has what they want to see out of it, being able to honestly lay cards on the table and say, from this is what I'm looking for, where are we aligned? We also have to really shift power. We have challenges in terms of our perception, the power of money, the power of position, the power of knowledge. How do we address those power imbalances to make sure then the partnerships are not extractive, are not destructive? That is the way then we'll ensure that they're able to be sustainable. They're able to result in what we want to see in communities, and communities doesn't only mean rural communities, but a university like this is a community. How do we enable each player to see the value they're bringing, but also to appreciate the value of the other partnership? I think that's one of the key things that we need to consciously have at the top of our minds whenever we're looking at sustainable partnerships that can really transform our country. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We need to learn. We need to learn from one another. We need to learn from mistakes. There is need for shifting power. As we move on, one of the key actors when it comes to social innovations is funding. And I believe for most social innovators, the issue of funding is still something that they are grappling with. So how can funders best support transformative social innovations? And what are some of the innovative financing models that can be used to scale such innovation? I'll address this question to Dr. Kiiru.
Thank you so much. Having working in RISA and working with Innovators has taught me that there are different funders out there. Okay, beginning with, let's say your government. Your government will fund different agencies because it's their duty, it's their responsibility to ensure that systems are running. And as we know, that is the funding which is hardly enough. But let's say there are other funders, this philanthropic funding, and all these funders are not going to be funding the same kind of innovations. Rather, they'll be funding innovations from different aspects. For example, your government will fund to establish systems, to establish institutions, and just start the basic framework going. Then, a philanthropic partner or a non-profit like RISA will come and fund your ideas at the Innovation Hub. Now, the Innovation Hub is where you try to, I'm learning all this jargon being in the space, to prototype, to make all this kind of small mini modules. Like you go to an Innovation Hub, you find National has got this idea that you can actually buy airtime from an from a station whereby you just insert a coin and there, and she's got all these kind of things. Or you can make a call using, this kind of ideas, just testing them. We are going to do that. The non-profits, the philanthropists will come and fund that. Now, there's another kind of funder now who comes in and looks at which of these innovations have potential for market. In other words, which of these innovations has got potential of addressing a real problem affecting many people. In other words, which of these innovations is able to make a profit, to have commercial value out there. And they want to come and negotiate with the innovator in maybe give equity funding, and there's plenty of that, by the way. There's plenty, being in the space, there's plenty of that kind of funding. Where the gap is now is a market-ready innovations. And now another challenge we found at the universities, and I hope they know, who is from the university, who is university manager? Yes, you guys are letting us down, especially at RISA. We realize that now in our next round, you're going to do things differently. We are having all these big ideas from universities, very interesting prototypes, somebody coming up with an innovation that ensures that you grow your maize and the issue of aflatoxin is solved right from the field. Somebody coming up with some kind of a variety of groundnuts, high fat, low fat, different kinds of groundnuts. But then we come and we take them through this and we realize at the university, they do not even have a policy about ownership of that innovation. Is it the innovator or the university claims they own it? And that's where the catch is. Which funder is going to put their money in an innovation owned by a university? How now? Where do you begin with that? So those will not proceed to the market because of the ownership issues. Others, they tell the innovator that, when these university lecturers, sometimes they don't read the fine print. And you realize the university is going to be claiming 40% of the IV value of your innovation. And you're like, oh, the university just gave me a desk. I've been able to raise funding for this. And so the motivation just goes, and RISA has already invested in that. And then you come and find others do not even have a single framework of ownership or pushing the innovation into market. There's just zero, nothing. And you're like, okay, where do we begin? It's like, no, in our next cohort, and I was asking our colleagues, we have funded, we have supported these innovators, yet we cannot achieve. I think only 2 out of the 8 innovations we funded from universities are going to be proceeding for commercialization. And there are already possible funders who are looking to fund that. But the rest are not proceeding because some do not even have an IP. When it comes to patents, we tell innovators, a patent will take long and a patent expires. There are some innovations that do not need protection using a patent, but rather they need as trade secrets. Like, for example, you can never make a chicken like KFC, no matter how much you try. Only Coca-Cola knows how to make Coke and Fanta. It's a trade secret. It's not a patent. So at the end of the day, we try to take innovators with that. So we would like funders, the funding is not short. Where the issue is just the protocols of ownership, because equity funders would want to find an organization, because at the end of the day, they're investing, they're actually investors. Only people like RISA and your government are not so much into the profit thing. We are there to support good ideas, we are there to support the communities, we are there to support development, but equity funders want to have frameworks, and universities must come up and support their innovators with IPs, and give them good advice in terms of when you need a patent, when you need a trade secret. You find that, like, because of the way things are, they'd like to have a spin-off, but then the university is going to sue them that they worked under their name, and now that they have got a potential innovation, they want to start a company. So all those policies should be made in a way that we can enable, so that if I'm an innovator working at a university and they want to come up with a startup because of my invention, what is there that the university is demanding for me? What is the policy like? So that we do not come and say, I give up. And others are saying, I wish I can just sell this thing off without the university. I wish I can just sell this thing off without the university getting involved and just move on. So I think my time is up. I think it's gone.
Thank you so much, Daktari. And even as she was talking about funding, one thing is coming out very clearly, issues of policy. The regulatory framework really affects even funding for social innovators. And she's given us a very good example of the universities where it is a very big challenge. So I want to ask our panelist, Dr. Steve, what do you think is the role of policy and regulation in promoting, or on the other hand, in hindering social innovations and even the linkages and collaborations that we are talking about? And then how can policies and the legal framework be leveraged to accelerate innovation and broader change making across the sectors? So what is the role of policy, the regulatory framework in promoting social innovations? And the second part of the question is, how can these be leveraged to accelerate innovation and broader change making across the sectors?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much also to my fellow panelists. I think the first thing that one must remember in dealing with that question is innovation is power. Innovation is political. And therefore the state is very interested in who owns this power, who owns this influence. And so the regulatory environment is sometimes enabling, sometimes limiting. But to respond more specifically to the question, I want to use three limbs. The first limb is really going back to what Grace said. If the innovator feels that he or she is going to be exploited, if the innovator thinks that he or she is not going to benefit from the subsequent material or prestige outcome, then there is going to be a problem. So the first area of regulation has been around horizontal relationship between people partnering, university and a researcher, researchers themselves. It's now in, for many years people used to rush to register companies as of incubating a collective innovative ventures. But now in Kenya, the law of partnership is very generous. And we have three kinds of partnership. We have general partnership, which is a partnership model that you can agree on orally, and everybody, each partner is equal, enjoys outcomes and profit therein if you make material use of the innovation. Then there is a limited partnership. In limited partnership, you have one partner who is an active partner, managing, running, maybe if it's in the lab, is the one in the lab. If it's sort of a business, the one making sure that everyday running is there. But the other partner is called sleeping partner. Just now, the sleeping partner does not the privilege of day-to-day management, but enjoys all the other outcomes. Again, the sleeping partner is also protected from liabilities, but the general partner, the other partner, takes care, is liable for all activities of the business. Then the last type, which was introduced recently, actually 2 years ago, is the limited liability partnership, where all the partners can form an entity, not like a company, it's easier than a company. And in that partnership, all of you enjoy protection from losses. I like what Grace said, that failure is something you shouldn't fear, but you should protect yourself from being damaged by failure. So limited liability partnership helps you to protect yourself from being damaged by failure. So the first level of regulation, therefore, is horizontally among the actors. The second level of regulation is vertical regulation, where the state is involved and where the global community is involved. Here in Kenya in particular, our constitution is very generous. Article 33 of the constitution considers scientific innovation as part of right to expression. Innovation in Kenya is part of expression, which is even more creative than the United States. The First Amendment in the United States Constitution talks about freedom of speech. Speech does not entail innovation. Expression here entails innovation. Equally, Article 11 of the Constitution of Kenya also talks about culture, and beyond culture, it talks about innovation as well as part of a cultural cumulative outcome of cumulative civilizational ventures, which is protected. So the fact that we have a generous constitution that protects innovation is very, very good. But what has been the practice? World over, innovators move faster than the laws. And so the law tends to tell us, take it slow, take it slow. So we have to always bargain for the balance. We have to bargain for the balance. How do we bargain for the balance? I think innovators should move beyond, and this is something that was mentioned also by Dr. Joy, move beyond experimenting. Try to move to scale as soon as possible. Because the experience we have is, as soon as we move to scale, then the policymakers work harder to catch up with you. But remember always, innovators move faster than the policymakers. Finally, the third limb is really what we talked about, and also what was insinuated by Grace, is protecting innovation as property. Article 47 of the Constitution of Kenya is about right to property. And innovation is property. And there are many ways of protecting it. One of it is intellectual property rights that she mentioned. So you need to explore at what level, at what stage do you need a copyright, at what level do you need an IP, at what level do you need a trademark, and so that innovation is seen as property. But finally, the law in Kenya has been informed a lot by the experience of M-Pesa. You see, M-Pesa is regarded as an innovation. Yet, M-Pesa was an offshoot from mobile telephony. It was a venture that modified an existing innovation to create a product. But the product was so unique that not to be considered as a mere sub-item. And our current Scientific Innovation Act, which was recently amended after 2010, appreciates those who adjust a pre-existing innovation and give it a new dimension. That is now in Kenya registerable as a new innovation, is recognized as a new innovation. So my message therefore is that let us take advantage of the generous provisions in the Constitution of Kenya, those of us who are innovators here in Kenya, and explore the limits. And remember, innovation in Kenya is seen as an expression, which is protected in the Bill of Rights. Thank you.
Thank you so much. For us to get it right, we also need to get it right with our laws, with our policies, and with the regulatory framework. The issue of our IP regime is something that maybe we need to talk more about and see how it can be used even to spur the innovations that are springing up in our nation. So thank you so much. And even as we continue with our conversation to the near end, I would like to pose this question to all the panelists. What do you think is the future of these kinds of linkages, partnerships, collaborations, and co-creation on the African continent? What is the future? We have talked that yes, indeed, we have the linkages, we have the collaborations, but we need to strengthen them. What is the future? And how do you think that the Pan-African linkages can be accelerated for more transformative social innovations? We start with our panelist, Dr. Joy.
Thank you. Collaborations and partnership and co-creation is the way to go. Co-creation, at RISA, we strongly believe in that. Much as we are funded by the British government, we don't come with our own ideas and say, this is what you want to do. Rather, we sit down with our partners, and of course, we have a mandate, and we have objectives, and we have our goals. We do not try to go outside that. Let me be realistic on that. But you sit down with our partners and find out, given our space that we have and the space that you have, where is it that we have common interests? And so we work on those common interests. We try to have a win-win. So collaborations are not about imposing an idea. Like if I'm a founder, it's not about me imposing an idea on you or telling you what to do or what not to do. Rather, it's about sitting down and finding out areas of mutual interest, mutual benefit. That's how we address it. And I think that is a way forward, because everybody wants to feel like they are a valued partner. They're bringing in something into the table, and nobody is singing anybody else's sound. So our work becomes like, now this is what we agree. We co-create a proposal with you, literally. We co-create a proposal with you, and so we implement it together. So the work becomes simple. Are we implementing as agreed? If there are changes, of course, things change mainstream. We sit down together and see, given this eventuality which was not expected, how do we work around it so that at the end of the day, there's co-creation, there's collaboration, there's we believe in real partnerships. Now, in the Africa linkages, that is where the problem is. You know, it's like all these things, let me tell you something. The British government isn't funding us, or the Italian government isn't funding us because they are like, it's for you, we want to help you. No, there's a reason behind that, because at the end of the day, they are accountable to the taxpayers. The taxpayers will be asking, show us how you spent our money and what value is giving to us. So the idea that we are developing stronger partnerships in Kenya, because Kenya is a stronger partner, or with Tanzania, with Nigeria, with wherever, because they are a stronger partner, they are well positioned, is good for the country. So so the point is, and in Africa, for some reason, even not just in innovation or in academia, even in different areas of trade, we have failed to sort of come up with stronger linkages, like for example, strengthening intra-Africa trade. Yet we know it's the only way, if we want to talk about industrialization, given the current world, the trade policies, the tariff policies, and all that, is the only way we can be able to industrialize materially. You know that, for example, if you wanted to access a market in the UK, in Europe, you know that if you want to take any processed good, the tariff is prohibitive. Yet it could be possible that we can come up with inter-African linkages, and they can export Jews, I can export my shoes to Kinshasa, I can export to Lagos, for example, and we can help our industries to grow. Yet that has not developed. And looking at this and being in the space is about partnerships and collaborations cannot grow if there is no funding. And you find that the Africa-Western collaboration partnerships are stronger because of the financial aspect. But the West, for the various different reasons, they're able to fund some of these things. But what about us in Africa? If we knew what is good for us, if we knew what is best strategy for us to develop together, because you're working under similar context, we understand our issues properly, we understand what innovations work best and most efficient, we would come together and put money for intra-Africa linkages in science and innovation. Otherwise, we'll keep looking down upon that, this extremely important linkage for us, which can really take us far, very far as a continent, in pursuit of coming up with collaborations with the Western. Of course, there's space for that. There's space for everything. There's space for Africa-Western collaborations, because even the Sustainable Development Goals talk about partnerships and collaborations as a key pillar. But let us not also forget to strengthen the African linkages for science and innovation, and even for trade and other areas, because if Africa wants to succeed, we have to do it in a way that is sustainable, is well grounded, that our government is sustainable and is accordant, because all these trade blocks that you're trying to form cannot work until we are coherent.
To raise on that matter, really also agreeing with my colleague, Joy. One is Africa is taking political boundaries too seriously. Remember, political boundaries are fictitious demarcations, and political boundaries are not equal to knowledge boundaries. Political boundaries are not equal to innovation boundaries. If you go to the border towns, go to Busia, for example, people wonder, what is this boundary between Kenya and Uganda? So let's move with what people want. The political boundaries should not be taken more seriously the way we have done. Look at Europe, that's what they've done. Look at Asia, look at Latin America. Do not take national political boundaries seriously if you are to build a Pan-African system. Secondly, Africa has the largest number of youth compared to any other continent. Those of us, like myself, who are privileged to have teenagers in our houses, we live in a hub of innovation. You know, every day there's an innovation, be it the menu in the kitchen, be it what the TV can do, be it what the microwave can do. Every time there's a new innovation in my house. And I have given that freedom, and I enjoy a lot, because when I come to teach, then the young people think I'm still young. But it's because I have my teachers in the house. So equally, in the entire country, in the entire continent, let the youth lead us. Our youth are innovators. Remember, M-Pesa flourished in Africa before people in Europe thought an M-Pesa system can even exist. In fact, when the M-Pesa system was in initial days, we would be sending M-Pesa, and someone in Germany asked me, what are you doing? Sending money by phone? How is it possible? So, if you allow and M-Pesa, if you remember M-Pesa, the history of M-Pesa, some of you who studied it, M-Pesa was a logic really created by youth. It was a youth idea that led into M-Pesa, if you are to look at the genealogy of M-Pesa. And my last point is indigenous knowledge. This thing of looking at the West as a guiding star is a big problem. Indigenous knowledge does not mean traditional ethnic knowledge. It means your context. You remember they say that when you're in trouble, that becomes the incubator, that becomes the space through which you innovate. So let our situations become avenues through which we think of new solutions of remodeling our world. One of the major hindrances to innovation in Africa is because we want to admire Dubai, we want to admire Singapore, we want to admire New York, and we want to cut and paste what is in Singapore and paste it in Kenya. Not recalling that what you see as innovation in Singapore developed in a particular historical, cultural, contextual moment. So we have our own moments that have been compelling us to innovate. For example, although I don't use matatu, but I'm a lover of matatu art. Matatu art is a good expression. I don't like the noise and the unruliness. But as an art, as a form of public expression, I love matatu. I think it's very good. And I think it's created a new form of artistic expression. And if you look at the graffiti movement in this country, which is used also as a tool of democracy, as a tool of public speech, it's very good. So let us invest, let us respect, let us glorify our indigenous knowledge as innovation. I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity also to be part of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to our next panelist.
Thank you. And Dr. Ouma has actually taken most of the points that I had. But let me add to the issue around boundaries and borders. We must also break the language barrier that we have. You know, as we are discussing this, we're discussing this as Africans. Can we ensure that when we're having these conversations, we go beyond English, we go beyond ensuring that we can reach different, all the African people that we're speaking to. As Africans, we must be bold. We seem not to be bold the way our forefathers were, the way ancient communities were, and even looking at our history. We must ensure that the young people and even the older people, we learn the right history about Africa. Before there was excessive, development in other parts of the world, there were libraries of great knowledge here in Africa. There were institutions of learning here in Africa in ancient times that we seem to have forgotten, or we don't tell ourselves that we are equal partners in the globe. We have bright minds, we have fertile ground, we are blessed with great weather, great resources, but as Africans, we seem, again, to not want to tap into these great innovations and resources that we have. So I think we must be bold. The young people, we must focus on the right history, tapping into our culture, and not looking at everything that comes, as was said, that comes from other continents is more superior to what we have. I think as Africans, we really must reflect on the misinformation and the wrong mindset that we have, that we are second class or that we are not as good as. And how can we then ensure that we tap into that really to take forward the transformation? We have high net worth individuals here in Africa. To what extent are we able to tap into those resources as well to then push social innovation and transformation? For me, that is really the key things that I see are necessary for us to go to the next level. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will start with the resources that we have in Africa. We have our own homegrown solutions, like the panelists have said. And because of sometimes the funding challenges, where we get the donor comes with money and we agree to them in many ways. And by the way, for your information, only 9% of the funding that comes to Africa is driven by local organizations. In other words, it doesn't come to a local organization. It comes to either a section of that organization in those countries, but not a homegrown organization. So that, in a way, changes our thinking, because when money comes, we sometimes are weakened by it to a point where we don't drive our solutions, the ones that we know work, and allow the development partners to tweak that. And sometimes in tweaking that, we never achieve our transformational change that we would like to have. Now, coming to funding again, there is a new wave of funding, especially in Africa, where consortiums are attracting the donor more than silos. And just to give an example of academia, because that's the discussion we have today, you know very well that Tangaza University focuses on social entrepreneurship, and therefore is pushing innovations in the social entrepreneurship space. When you go to a university like Strathmore is pushing innovations in climate change. You go to USIU, it's pushing innovations in the creative industry. And what is happening in that collaboration with the academia is that, for example, in the case of creative industry, we don't have very good structures in Kenya. We have great artists. They don't even have terms of reference. Even if they were to look for a job somewhere else, they don't know who they are. I mean, there's no clear criteria of who they are, what they do, how much they can earn. So in a program that's currently ongoing with USIU, that's what the structure is being built through that collaboration. And that will grow the creative industry, where our young people that's an area that young people are very interested in. So this formalization that also brings certification is going to be very, very key in ensuring that that industry grows. So academia is there for supporting that, and it can't happen without academia, because that's where the certification is, the training is, and all that. Now, on systems change, which is where we are heading to as we collaborate, there's several important aspects of what we do that drives us to systems change. One is policies that have just been discussed very ably here, and so I won't go into that. The other one is the practices. The practices have also been described by the panelists because they've talked about the different practices that are key, and one of them is collaboration, co-creating new networks, and connecting, because without doing that, then we can never achieve systems change. The other one is the power dynamics. We also talked about the power dynamics here, so that means we've covered quite a bit of that. And the other one is mentor models. Here, I know yesterday we had a session on wellness, and that's part of it. The way we must shift our thinking, we must learn and relearn, and we've been talking about that, because it is in building the way we think, the way we perceive things, and the way we accept differences that we are able to build on what we have to achieve the systems change. So I just wanted to bring that because Ashoka is, of course, known for systems change. If I didn't do that, my colleagues here from Ashoka may decide that I haven't done a great job today. Now, I think that is about it for that. And the rest have been mentioned by my colleagues. I don't need to, yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. You will all agree with me that the future is bright. With all these kind of linkages, partnerships, and collaborations, then we know that we are headed in the right direction. And with that, we wrap up on this session. And I believe we've been able to learn and hear a lot from our panelists. And maybe some of their insights are thought-provoking on what we need to do in the next step. So because of time, let the conversation continue in other spaces so that we can see how we can be able to leverage on the linkages, partnership, and collaborations to enable systems change. And with that, we come to the end of the session, and I request us to appreciate our panelists. I believe they've done a very good job. Let's appreciate them.